you basically knowing my ideology, and basically you knowing me knowing yours, you can support some of our programs. Is that what you're saying?
Why not?
And you believe in programs like the Breakfast with Children program and free health clinics? Right on, brothers?
We believe they're good things.
Uh-huh.
As a focal point to organize their mothers and fathers.
Uh-huh.
Peace.
Mm-hmm. There's no educational program here?
That's come out of the social action thing. You know, you set that up, bro. I mean, we can't put everything on one piece of paper.
What about this bank?
Credit union?
Mm-hmm.
Credit union. Credit union, my brother.
Is a bank.
Are you hip to credit unions?
It is a bank.
Yeah, you go and borrow money?
Yeah.
It's a bank.
It's a bank. Owned by the people. Run for the people. And by the people.
What will money be given out to people for?
Well, the people would decide that.
You want to buy?
You know, whatever, you know, the people in the community decide.
You need some living room furniture, maybe? You need a car, maybe?
See, the thing is with me, you dig, I need to know some more about it. I wish you had some more literature about the educational thing here. Because, you dig, as far as we're concerned in the struggle, the way we look at struggle is that this depends on the educational thing, you dig. Because
this depends on the education.
Well, the whole thing.
No, but in the end, this does. You can form this with no education. You can form this.
No, not the way we're talking about forming it. You know, right. We're talking about forming it right. You know, it's not on the paper. We didn't write it on the paper.
You can form it right with no education.
No.
Let me give you an example. Jomo Kenyatta formed the excellent revolution with no education. And on the end thing, Jomo told the motherfucker, said, well, you know, you can educate, hate the enemy, but I'm your brother. I'll help you lead the revolution. Now I'm going to oppress you. Another example, Papa Doc in Haiti. Papa Doc in Haiti hated everything white. Man, you couldn't put this white paper in front of Papa Doc's face. But he moved all the white people out and he took over and be oppressed. He did, causing no education. And the people that had been educated, they just said that we don't hate the motherfucking white people, we hate the oppressor, whether he be white, black, brown, or yellow. So we got to know the educational program to find out what it's going to be in the finale. A lot of people, Jomo Kenyatta is called not never a revolutionary, but an ex-revolutionary. So is Papa Doc. They brought on a successful revolution. That thing in the Mile was a bitch. Bantu freedom fighters, all that kind of action. What we're saying is the end. That you don't judge Castro now. You can't do it. Nobody in this room could judge whether Castro's going to be a revolutionary or not. You know what I mean? We're talking about things, you know what I mean, with China, the People's Republic, and even at the stage they're in now, talking about even going on further into a communistic state. That's what we're talking about. Those are revolutionary. So we got to understand here the educational program that you have to be able to figure out whether it will go on the right lines where the people will end up in a situation where they can be able to really control themselves. You understand what I'm saying? With no education, the people take this local foundation and start stealing money because they won't be really educated to why it's the people's thing anyway. You understand what I'm saying? With no education, you have neo-colonialism instead of colonialism, like you got in Africa now, like you got in Haiti. So what we're talking about is there has to be educational program. That's very important. As a matter of fact, it's so important for us that a person has to go through 6 weeks of our political education before he can consider himself a member of the party, able to even run down ideology for the party. Why? Because if they don't have an education, then they're nowhere. You dig what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. You might get people caught up in the emotionalist movement. You understand me? You might get them caught up in because they're poor and they want something. And then if they're not educated, they want more. And before you know it, they'll be capitalists. And before you know it, we'll have Negro imperialists.
How's everybody doing? Bless y'all, and let's get started. As we know, for those who are just tuning in, if this is your first episode tuning in to G.L.U.E Movement Radio, we let you know how it goes. You will be with us every Thursday between 3 and 6. And as you know, between 3 and 4, we always start the show with the Sankofa Hour. Between 4 and 5, we take Q&A, we answer questions, we dialogue with anyone who may have questions about what we're discussing, and then from 5 to 6, we discuss current events. And at the top of the hour, we got playlists coming with your favorite music on the WMRR radio station, online radio station, okay? So, we will kick off with the Sankofa Hour. And as you know, Sankofa is an Adinkra symbol, and it signifies the importance of looking back into the past to get lessons for the future. Looking back into the past to get life lessons for the future. So we call this the Sankofa Hour. And every Sankofa Hour is a continuation of the last episode. So what we talk about on the Sankofa Hour is the history of the black man. The history of the black man before slavery. And for anybody who say, well, how come you only relegated to just being black and we're all mankind and whoopie-whoop and whoopie-whoop. G.L.U.E movement, G.L.U.E nation, anything that we do will always be a safe space for us to sit down and talk about being black. We are not here to try to please everybody or appease everybody, and we are not here to be all inclusive. We are here to deal with the issues affecting the black community, and not only deal with the issues, because we know that everybody is good at pointing out the issues. By now we know the problem. We've had great leaders and wonderful leaders in the black community that have done a wonderful job in pointing out the problems. And if you still need the problems in the black community to be pointed out, well, you can go to Hidden Colors 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can get a full rundown of the problems in the black community. But when it comes to me, when it comes to Brother Hakeem Royce, when it comes to dealing with the black community from my perspective, I always want to bring solutions. We are solution-oriented. We are goal-oriented. You understand? So we're always here to bring solutions to the issues going on in the black community so that we can begin to pull ourselves together as a nation, because that is going to be imperative in our future. So I was chilling with my homeboys. You know, I be chilling with my peoples and everything, and you know, it was kind of funny. It comes to my mind now. I was like, hey baby, we heard you got your own radio show. That's good, that's good. Well, what you be talking about on your radio show? And I told him, I said, I like to teach about black ancestors. I like to teach about the black ancestors. Well, okay, all right then. Well, do your thing, baby. All right. You know, they kiss you on the cheek and they go about their business. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we talk about. We teach about the black ancestors. And last week we did start off at the very beginning of black history. And we always start off in the beginning. God made the heavens and the earth. What's going on, my boy? How you doing, man? Shouts out to you. Wave to all my people. Wave to you. Wave to you. Wave to you. What's happening? So how I always start off when it comes to teaching black history, first of all, I teach black history before slavery. There is a lot of things that happened that led up to us becoming slaves. And in order for you to understand how to make it out of this present day slavery, whether it be mental or physical or financial or whatever it may be, you have to understand how we got there. And to understand how we got there, to understand the significance of where we are and why we need to know how we got here, we need to understand where we came from. You understand? And black history did not start with slavery. So what was blacks doing before slavery? And to understand what blacks were before slavery, you have to talk about G.L.U.E. First time watching the show? Well, brother, we're going to give you a lot of good information. We're going to get into a lot of stuff today. And one of the things we're going to get into, brother, is G.L.U.E. Land of the spirit people, cradle of creation, mother of mankind. Whenever you hear the word G.L.U.E, just think about pre-colonial Africa. Pre-colonial Africa. Africa before its influences from European nations and all the things of the like. What was Africa before its influences from the colonizers and other nations that brought war and conquest onto this nation of people? G.L.U.E. You can begin to understand the history of who we were as a people before our influences from the Western world and from these other warlike cultures that came to the continent. You can start off by looking at the Adinkra symbols. There are about 60 different Adinkra symbols. 60 different Adinkra symbols that all point to the culture of our people before the time of slavery. And once you begin to study these 60 different Adinkra symbols, and there are 60 different Adinkra symbols, and a lot of them have variations, so that puts the number of Adinkra symbols at about 120 symbols. So these different symbols will begin to point to the culture of our people before slavery. So you have symbols such as Duenemen, which is the ram's horn, which is a sign of strength, but not strength from power, strength from humility. The ram. When the ram goes to butt his head, it puts his head down. So it is a sign of strength, but from humility, from a humble position. This is Duenemen. Okay, you also have Nkonson Konson, which is a sign of wisdom and using wisdom to come to practical solutions to problems. Okay, Nkonson Konson. So the important thing to understand about when you're dealing with African language is it's not like the English language. It's not like the Latin language. It's not like the language that we speak here. Other nations, they call this language a dead language. Okay, because things here are defined by nouns. Okay, what is love? A feeling that you get for a person that is generally of strong emotional content. That's definitions in English. That's English words, okay? But in African culture, what is love? Love is caring for a person, for protecting a person. Love is a lot of the definition of words in the African culture is defined by parables, defined by stories. So when you look at these Adinkra symbols and you look at the definition of the Adinkra symbol, every Adinkra symbol is attached to a parable, attached to a story, attached to something that symbolizes the essence of what the symbol means. This is the African language. The African language it defines words with verbs, not nouns. You understand what I'm saying? So these Adinkra symbols can begin to give you a complete picture of what our culture was like before we came here. I remember I heard somebody and they made the assertion that American culture is black culture. They made the assertion that American culture is black culture. You understand? And that scared me a little bit. It scared me a little bit. And I understand that they were making the assertion that American culture is black culture because so much of black culture has been incorporated into American culture. But American culture in itself, Western culture in itself, could not be further from black culture, because black culture is the original African culture. And they could say, okay, Royce, you say that black culture is African culture, but most blacks are in other countries outside of Africa. So if they're living according to that culture, then you can't say that that's not black culture, because that's the culture that blacks are living according to. But therein lies the problem. Therein lies the reasons for your sicknesses. Therein lies the reasons for why we are in the condition that we are in. Because understand what a culture is. A culture is developed by its people. You understand? A culture is developed by its people. That means this is our culture. This is the culture built on how we survive, and not even on how we survive. Surviving is something you do when you're in an opposing culture. Survival mode. The way that blacks think right now, the way that blacks live right now, we are constantly in survival mode. You understand? And all the decisions we make and how we react to all our problems and how we deal with everything, it comes from a survivalist mentality. You understand? So we can never make the next move the best move, because the next move is the move that we have to make in order to survive for that moment. Because I wouldn't say most blacks, because as we was talking about on the last broadcast, you got blacks in other countries who are definitely not as oppressed as we are over here, but they do go through their own forms of oppression, even if it just means being pushed off from the rest of society. So I would make the assertion that blacks all over the world stays in some kind of ghetto. But what is a ghetto? The word ghetto is a word that came from the Jewish Nazi era. And the word ghetto means it's the same thing as a project. And during this era when they was persecuting those white Jews over there, they put them in ghettos, they put them in projects. And these were places that were separated from everybody else in the country. And it was the places that got the last of the food, the last of the water, the last of the resources, if they got anything. This was a place where people were starving to death, and people were hungry, and there was high crime in the area because there were no resources for the people to be able to survive. You know what I'm saying? If you look at Hunger Games, if you ever seen the movie Hunger Games, you understand, with Mockingjay and everything, those little camps that they had, those would be defined as ghettos. You understand what I'm saying? So blacks all over the world, in every country where they are, live in some kind of ghetto. Whether it be Tokyo, whether it be India, no matter where they are, these blacks have been separated and isolated from society, and they have been placed in a place where they get the last of all the resources on that land. And they're trying to do that. They've been trying to do that in Africa as well. Now, it's not a bad thing for us to be isolated away from everybody else because, you know, as I'm about to go into, it is us living under other cultures that have put us in the survivalist condition that we are in. But the problem comes that when we are separated from other cultures and we are placed in these isolated places, because we don't know how to fend for ourselves. And now I get specifically into blacks who are in the West, the blacks who are in America, because we don't know how to fend for ourselves, because we have been indoctrinated with something that is diabolically opposed to the nature of who we are, because we don't know how to fend for ourselves. These ghettos do become places where we starve and where we end up hungry, where we end up killing each other and turning on each other and fighting each other and coming against each other and betraying each other, and everybody's just looking for a way to get out because we have been separated from our nature as a people. It's, if I talk to a black in America, if I talk to a person in America, most blacks in America are dependent upon the white man. Dependent. They need the white man to pay for their house. They need the white man to help them get food. They need the white man to give them jobs. And when they have rent, they're calling the white man and saying, give me a couple more months because I'm not going to have it right now. We got blacks all over the streets, and the white man got to put them in shelters. We're dependent on their transportation system. We're dependent on their restaurants for food because a lot of us, we've been so separated from the other generations. We have been separated from a generation where we cook. We've been separated from a generation where we knew how to take care of a home. We've been separated from a generation where we knew how to hold down a marriage, where two heads are better than one, a threefold cord is not easily broken. So when you have the mother, the father, and the child together, that family can take care and can weather any storm that may come, because a threefold cord is not easily broken. But the black family has been broken. The black family has been broken. The black, during the civil rights era, from the Marcus Garvey era to the civil rights era, was completely supported by working class black families. From the Marcus Garvey era, Marcus Garvey, while doing the Pan-African movement, purchased two ships. This was in 1929. This was back, we were fresh off the cotton fields, still going through Reconstruction and all of that. This was the most oppressive time for black people. And during this time period, Marcus Garvey purchased two ships. Because the Marcus Garvey movement, all the way up to the civil rights movement, was supported by working class black families. Feels good. Supported by working class black families. So a part of their strategy after they killed Malcolm X and after they killed King was to begin to break down the black family structure. And now every dollar you get, every resource you get, everything you get, you have to go to them to get it. You have to go to the white man to get it. And if you don't go to them, you remain poor and you will end up having to starve or end up having to go hurt one of your brothers to end up going and get it. They created these conditions. So the culture that has been developed by blacks is a survivalist culture. It's a survivalist culture. And people are actually making the evolution, people are actually making the, assertion that the current condition of the black man is a result of natural evolution. Well, keep in mind that evolution happens as a response to the environment. Evolution happens as a response to the environment. Example, when I didn't leave my hometown the first time I ever left Florida. I'm from Florida, I'm from Broward County. And I remember going to Miami or going to West Palm or going to Key West was like going out of state. You feel me? Going out of state was like going out of the country. I had never been anywhere. I had never traveled anywhere. I thought that every place in the world was like Broward County. You understand what I'm saying? And it wasn't until I joined the military and I did a lot of traveling around the country in the military, and I began to live in different neighborhoods with different ethnicities and different groups of people, that I realized, wow, so this is what a natural civilization that is allowed to naturally evolve looks like. Like, I remember walking down the street and people will wave at you. You're like, hey, how you doing? And people outside cutting the grass and walking the dog, and it's peaceful and it's quiet, and even the air feels like it smells different. You know what I'm saying? And when you walk inside the stores, the people wave at you and they say hi, and they ask you if you need any help or anything. You know what I'm saying? And I remember while I was there, I would make frequent trips down to, back to where I come from to see my family and stuff like that. And I remember when you're driving south in Florida, when you get past a certain point, you see police lights on every corner. And I would go into the Walmart to get something, and somebody would be in the Walmart fighting with the security guard. You know what I'm saying? And people are closing the windows and locking the doors. You know what I'm saying? And this one is on the street corner yelling at this one, and the windows are boarded up and the businesses are closed, and if you're outside after a certain amount of time, you might get robbed, and I'm like, it gave me a compare and contrast. And it helped me to understand that the black man in Western culture, the black man in America, is not allowed to naturally evolve. And this can be seen from the Public Enemy era. This can be seen from hip-hop. Hip-hop is the clearest example of this, because hip-hop did start off with a message. Hip-hop did start it off as a vehicle to enlighten and empower and strengthen the people. You know what I'm saying? It was a vehicle for us to speak to the people. Hip-hop was black news. Hip-hop was our news. If we wanted to know what was going on with our people, if you wanted to speak to your people as a whole, you had to be the hottest hip-hop guy. And your song had to say something that people wanted to hear. You understand what I'm saying? But hip-hop came out during the time of, hip-hop was prevalent around the time of the Black Panther era. Huey P. Newton, Fred Hampton, all of these guys, the Black Panther era. That was Rob Bass. That was all of that stuff was taking off around the same time. So you see a Public Enemy and Fight the Power and Spike Lee movies and John Singleton movies and you got MC8 and you got great R&B. You got Montel Jordan, Something for the Homies, and you just got great music. The R&B is great. The hip hop is great. We are a nation. You got Different World on the TV. You got Martin on the TV. You got Fresh Prince of Bel-Air on the TV. And everybody got their red, black, and green sweaters. And it's just it's a wonderful time to be black. It's a wonderful time to be black. It's a beautiful time to be black. We are strong. We are united. You know what I'm saying? We are together. We are a family. You know what I'm saying? So it's a beautiful time to be black. You understand what I'm saying? But after the Panther era was wiped out, because the Panthers was going strong, and the Panthers had breakfast for children programs and sickle cell anemia research programs, and man, we were so together. And during that time, the Black Panthers was actually looking at getting coast-to-coast coverage, an East and West Coast branch of the Black Panthers that could communicate back and forth. And Black Panthers was in each city, every city where there was a ghetto, every city where there was a hood, you had a Black Panther headquarters there. And all the different headquarters communicated with each other to form a network for our people. If there was any laws or anything judicially that affected the black community, the Black Panthers from that region would come together and march down to the legislation office together and put their voice in the ballot office. You understand? It was a very powerful time for our people. We had representation economically, we had representation politically, we had strong black family structure. We had black-owned laundromats, black-owned stores, black-owned restaurants. Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam had Nation of Islam laundromats, Nation of Islam restaurants, Nation of Islam house, everything. It was a beautiful, beautiful time to be black. Beautiful time to be black. But then the FBI then infiltrate now the Black Panther organization. Infiltrate all the organizations. They infiltrated Nation of Islam, they infiltrated Black Panthers, they infiltrated all the organizations, and they begin to divide and conquer, break up these organizations, split up these organizations. And the Black Panther organization, after they put the Panther 29 and begin locking up and running raids all across the Black Panther civilization. And this was after the president got on national TV and said the greatest threat to national security was the Black Panthers. Let me say it another way. The greatest threat to national security was black unity. Everything that I named, everything that I just spoke, this beautiful civilization that we had, the president got on TV and said this was the greatest threat to the national security of the country. So now the police begin going from coast to coast, kicking in and raiding all of the Black Panther offices. All of them. Locking up everybody. And now a lot of the resources and a lot of the funds that was going towards the Black Panther era, it all went on court costs and lawyer fees and bail bondsmen and getting the Panther 21 out of jail and this, it bankrupted the Black Panther movement. It bankrupted them. So now it put the Black Panther movement in a state of survival. In a survival mode. And now, when the Black Panther movement was in this state of survival, in this survival mode, then they came and brought drugs into the community. The Black Panther era was the first time that they started to mass produce drugs into the black community, to push drugs into the black community. So now, the Black Panther movement, which started off as crossing guards in the streets to make sure the kids didn't get hit by cars, and you will always hear about the Black Panther movement that was like, fuck the police. But you won't hear about the Black Panther movement that was feeding children before they went to school. The Black Panther movement that was hosting basketball games and charity events in the community. The Black Panther movement that reignited the phrase coined by Marcus Garvey, "Black is beautiful." That had black people coming together on basketball courts and on fields and just celebrating just being who we are. They won't tell you too much about that side. They'll only tell you about the Black Panthers that was carrying rifles and saying fuck the police. You know? But we were a community. And now they begin to come and pump drugs into this community. And I would say a third of the black community would end up strung out on these drugs. Another third of the community would end up selling these drugs. And another third of the community would end up trying to fight the ones selling these drugs. And that would bring a division between the remainder of the black people that wasn't strung out. You see, so during the fallout from this is where you get the gangster rap era. This is where you get the gangster rap era from. And this is where you get Tupac. Tupac was probably the last Panther to be born. You feel me? Yeah. Matula Shakur, Asada Shakur, and his mother. He was probably the last Panther to be born. And if you look at the history of Tupac, if you look at Tupac when he was a child, Tupac was a performing arts student. He was a poet. Tupac was the first one to help me understand that poetry could be made into music. Because I started off writing poetry when I was 5 years old. You know what I'm saying? But I had never made the connection between poetry and hip-hop music. You know what I'm saying? But when I found out that Pac started off as a poet and he just began to put his poetry in music form, me as a young kid in elementary school, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. If you just switch up the flow and switch up the cadence a little bit, yeah, hey, I'm a rapper. Yeah. I learned that from Pac. Pac started off as a performing arts student. You understand? So, with everything going on with his mother, you know what I'm saying, and you know, R.I.P. to her, you know, his mother, you know what I'm saying, Phoenix Shakur, you know, she passed recently, R.I.P. to her. She's up there with her son now, you know what I'm saying, you know, with all the pressure and oppression, you know, that was coming down on the people, you know what I'm saying, she had to make certain decisions to move from Baltimore to California. You understand? And this is where Pac was taken out of the performing arts school, taken out of the, you know, the life he had, you know what I'm saying? That was where he met Jada Pinkett, and that was where he was, you know, he moved over to California. He moved over to Cali. You know what I'm saying? Oakland, and he moved around in California a lot, you know, going from different group homes and stuff like that. And a documentary put it well, where it said what Pac did was Pac became the father of the Black Panthers' children. Because now that the Black Panthers had been destroyed, now that the Black Panthers had been completely divided and conquered, you had all of these children from the Black Panther era that had nowhere to go, that had nothing to do. They wasn't born in the drug culture. They wasn't born in a gangster rap culture. There was no culture but black is beautiful culture. But that culture was destroyed. Huey P. Newton, dead. Eldridge Cleaver, exiled. And Bobby Seale, Fred Hampton, dead. Bobby Hutton, dead. You know what I'm saying? I think at that time Angela Davis was probably still in jail if she hadn't got out. But Panther 21, jail. You know what I'm saying? And now the only person really out was Bobby Seale. You feel me? So you got all of these children from the Black Panther era that was orphans. So it is the children from the Black Panther era that became the gangster rap generation. And this goes to my point. For those who would make the assertion that the current condition of the black community is a result of natural evolution, evolution is just a response to the atmosphere that you're in. It's just a response. Whenever you speak about evolution, you'll always hear about Darwin's theory that he did in the Galapagos Islands with the birds. And the birds on the island used to have soft beaks. But because the ground began to harden up over time and the food that they ate was seeds that fell from the trees in the ground, over time they developed hardened beaks so that they could poke through the harder ground to get to the food. You understand? So evolution is just a response to the conditions that you're in, to the atmosphere that you're in. So because our atmosphere, because our environment, evolution is a response to the environment. Because our environment is constantly being tampered with and destroyed and manipulated and altered, then you cannot say that the current conditions of black people are a product of natural evolution. You can't say going from Queen Latifah, who you calling a bitch, to I'm the baddest bitch was natural evolution. You can't say from Public Enemy to NWA was natural evolution. It wasn't. They broke us down to a degree where we had to struggle to survive. So we adapted in order to survive. And now people would say, hey y'all, this is black culture. Killing each other, robbing each other, selling dope to each other, selling drugs to each other. The men completely disrespecting the women. Y'all bitches, y'all hoes. The women, I don't need no niggas. Y'all ain't good for nothing but sex. Niggas ain't nothing. This is black culture. But they will never tell you about all the things going on in our environment and going on in our society that shaped the adaptations that we had to make in order to survive. So I'll see stuff on YouTube and I get as angry when I see it as you would probably get when I say it. But I see stuff on YouTube where it says Pac was the biggest fake of all time. Pac wasn't a real gangster. He was pretending to be gangster. Pac evolved to survive. He evolved to survive. If they didn't put drugs and crack and coke and put all this stuff into our community, kill all of our leaders, imprison all of our leaders, break up every kind of campaign and movement that we have to keep ourselves together as a people, Pac would have been another Fred Hampton. But by the time Pac and all of his generation grew up, the people that raised them, the people that gave birth to them were gone. And now you got these rich record labels and rich Jewish record labels that was just simply paying artists to come up and rap about what life was instead of what it could be. The first gangster rap groups, NWA, all of them, you can see this on Straight Outta Compton. The first gangster rap groups were supported by whites, by white Jews, who would come into the black community and they would see the artist, okay, this artist is still trying to keep strong that Black Panther era, still trying to keep strong that Public Enemy era. Okay, you know what? You can stay on the corner and keep selling your mixtapes out of the trunk of your car. But human nature, period, is to adapt in order to survive. So when they would ask us about, well, what do you think about gangster rapping, and do you think that gangster rap is a detriment to the black culture? And they would say, well, no, it's not a detriment to the culture. We just rap about what we live. That's what we live, so we rap about what we see. But how we live and what we see was all being manipulated by this country. Manipulated by the powers that be. If I say invisible hand, it sounds mysterious. Manipulated by the powers that be. So we are rapping about what we see, but what we see is being placed there. So we're doing exactly what they want us to do. Remember reading Sun Tzu, Art of War. And it says the greatest weapon in war is deception. It said he who has mastered warfare is he who can fight without fighting. And it says that books like The Art of War and theologies and mentalities like The Art of War are theologies and mentalities that shaped Western culture. So this was warfare for them. Every time they took down one of their movements, they would make adjustments to where that movement would never rise again. Make adjustments. When Marcus Garvey came, black churches were not prevalent. They were not prevalent. Blacks had just got out of slavery. They was focused on getting their life together. In that time period, you had to move or die. So everybody was focused on action. Everybody was focused on doing. And the depression in the condition of the black community that Marcus Garvey found them in was because they were not allowed to do, because they were passing certain laws that if you didn't have a job, you would go to jail. But they weren't giving jobs. So they were simply just locking people up and putting them back in slavery through the jail system. So Marcus Garvey would go to churches with very popular, white speakers. And Marcus Garvey had the heart, he had the message, he knew what he wanted to say to the people, but he was shy when it came to public speaking. The first time Marcus Garvey ever spoke, he got dizzy and fell off the stage. So he was, you can call it camera shy or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But it was hard for him to speak in front of people, even though he knew what needed to be said. So Marcus Garvey would begin to mimic the preaching styles of the white pastors in the communities where, you know what I'm saying, he was. Marcus Garvey was a rich man from Jamaica, so he was able to get into communities that slaves who was recently released from American slavery were not able to. So he actually mimicked a lot of preacher and pastoral styles in order to form his orating style. So Marcus Garvey became our preacher. He became our pastor, that fiery speaker that fired us up to get up and make action. After they ran Marcus Garvey out of the countries, they began to put up their own churches in all the black communities. Their own churches. These 501c3 government regulated black churches. That was to make sure that never came back. And it was cool, because you end up getting your Mark, you ended up getting your Malcolm X's, whose father was a black preacher of Pan-Africanism. His father was a Garveyite. You end up getting your Martin Luther Kings, you understand, who grew up in segregated South and saw all the problems of the division that was created between the two people. So as you have those who are adapting to survive, you also have those who are adapting to keep the marathon going, to continue the marathon. You understand? So now you got the civil rights era. Bam, bam, bam. And the civil rights era was being supported by working class black families. And the meeting places for the Black Panthers, the meeting places for Martin Luther King, the meeting places for Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam would be the local black churches. You feel me? It would be hard pressed to find a church in this generation that would allow Malcolm X or Marcus Garvey to come and preach about black revolution in their pulpits. Hey, you can't preach that stuff here. We're 501c3. There's certain things we're not allowed to preach about, or they'll take away our funding. But back then, the black churches was the place where they had all of their meetings to talk about the moves and what needed to happen in the black community. Civil rights era. See. So one thing that made the Black Panther movement so supported in the black community was that the Black Panther movement was not just carrying guns. It wasn't just carrying guns. You hear about Eldridge Cleaver, but what you hear about the most, who you hear about the most, is Huey P. Newton. Because Huey P. Newton understood, and the women of the Black Panther movement understood, that people aren't necessarily going to support a movement where you're just carrying guns and getting into it with the police. You understand? But the Black Panther movement was feeding the hungry children in the black community. They were doing research on ailments and afflictions that were prevalent in the black community. Right now, the black community, a lot of the children, a lot of the youth in the black community are mentally traumatized. The black community needs more mental health facilities. And not mental health facilities ran by the government. We need black-owned, black-led mental health facilities for the black community. every time a black mental health issue pops up in the black community, the response of the government is to either kill them, put them in jail, or make it illegal or something to rope them up. But there is no mental health facilities to deal with our people, to understand what our people are going through and why our people are making the decisions that they make. It's definitely not going to come from them. And the problem is we're still looking for them to do the things for our people that we should be doing. You understand what I'm saying? So, after the civil rights era, and after they were able to put down the civil rights era and neutralize all of the black movements that was going on at that time, what was the biggest supporters of the civil rights era? It was black families. So what did? They began to institute welfare programs. The Breakfast for Children program that the Black Panthers led, that fed thousands of children a day and that garnered most of the support for the Black Panther movement that they had, they instituted their own version, which was the free lunch program. But this was offered in their public schools, teaching their history, teaching their curriculum to our people. The Black Panthers wasn't doing it anymore. So now, once again, we had to depend on them. Anytime that we formed any way to be independent that was broken, that was destroyed, and the dependency upon them was put in its place. See? So now, what the welfare programs and the Section 8 programs and what the housing programs and what these programs did was told the woman, well, since your man cannot provide for you anymore, because remember, the civil rights movement was supported by working class black families. Most of the working class black families were trade workers. They weren't secretaries or psychologists or sports analysts or news anchors and none of that. They were trade workers. Automotive mechanics, carpenters, air conditioning repairmen. They worked in the local black businesses in the community. Black Wall Streets and all of those things. They burned down Black Wall Street. Any leader that was the fire and motivation and that was the soul behind the black economy and any kind of black unification was either murdered, killed, or imprisoned. You understand? And then now, once all of our black businesses were destroyed, literally burned down, or literally a bomb dropped on it, or the people literally killed and ran away, once those were destroyed, now we had to depend on them for jobs, and they would not hire the black man for anything. And then now that we as a black people were without jobs, now they would come to the black woman and say, well, since the black man cannot provide for you, we'll provide for you, but you have to get the black male out of the house. And if you don't get the black male out of the house, we're not going to provide for you. We're literally going to leave you to die because we've just taken all the jobs and everything out of your community. So from the Marcus Garvey era, where they called Marcus Garvey a black Moses, he was the first preacher in the black community. When they got him out of the way, they put up black churches. Then came the civil rights era, which was supported by working class black families. When they were able to neutralize the civil rights era and all the other black eras and things going on at that time, they began to put in programs that divided and split up the black family. You feel me? And they began to destroy all, they destroyed whatever remnants of black businesses that was left. The Black Panther era, after they were able to neutralize the Black Panthers and get the Black Panthers out of there, and they finally got them shut down, what did they do? They brought drugs into the community, and they brought guns into the community, and they put up alcohol and liquor stores in the community, and then they began to come into the community and fund gangster rap. And now, in order for Pac to continue to be a messenger for his people, he had to make that transition. In order for him to stay in the fight, he had to make that transition. So we went from Black is Beautiful to a huge drop off. We went into an era of killing each other, murdering each other. I don't trust no nigga. I don't mess with no nigga. I sell drugs. I do dope. Whoop-de-whoop, whoop-de-whoop, whatever. But none of these things happened naturally. All of these was the result of an action taken against our people. So now to be sitting here in 2000, what I think that was 2017 or 2018, and to hear somebody say American culture is black culture, no, it's not. At all. Black culture is a culture developed from surviving slavery, surviving oppression. So in order to understand what black culture really is, you have to go back to before we got here. You have to go back to before slavery. You have to go back to before oppression, where we were allowed to live naturally and to grow naturally before our environment became so heavily influenced by oppression. So that is why when we talk about black history, we go back before slavery. And that is why I say American culture is not black culture. American culture is a culture of oppression. And when you look at Western culture as a culture of oppression, that's not black culture. For a black person to say that Western culture is black culture, it only exemplifies how separated we have been from who we are. Chad Boswick said this when he was on Breakfast Club. We have been completely separated from who we are. So now we have to understand black culture, because the culture of a free nation is developed by the people. It is not how the people survive, but it is how the people thrive. You understand? The culture is developed by the eating habits that keep the people healthy. The mentalities and principles that keep the people in unison, that keep the people moving together as a productive nation. It is built by the resources that help fund the everyday activities of the nation. The culture is developed by the people, for the people, through the people, for the best intent of the people. So understanding black culture before Eurocentric influence will help us as black people to understand who we are. And that is why we do this in Kofa Hour. To help the black man understand who he was before we got here. So that he can see that who he is now is actually, in most cases, who the black man is now. And the conditions have become so bad that now we have been forced to stand up and say, listen, I'm going to take who I am no matter what you got to say about it. And you see now blacks are beginning to come together on a mass scale. Because if this doesn't happen, what blacks are becoming are black versions of the white man. We're building black Western culture. And that's an oxymoron. That's a paradox. We're becoming black versions of the oppressor. But since we don't have nothing, we're just exercising this mentality against each other. So here on G.L.U.E Movement Radio, we talk about black culture. And we break down and define what black culture really is. And there are 7 layers to black culture. There's politics, family, arts and entertainment, education, news, spirituality, and economics. These are the 7 pillars of culture. So if that nation is not in control of these 7 pillars, then that is not their culture. The culture belongs to whoever controls these 7 pillars in that nation. You understand? So if everything that we do is being defined by the culture of another people, then it's not our culture, even though we're living in subjection to it. So when they ask about Black history, I always say, well, Black history starts with the Bible. Because the Bible is the story of the Black man. It is the story of Black culture. And other people and other cultures have mimicked this culture and have become the most powerful nations in the world. So that's what we talk about here. Black culture, what it truly is. So it is 4 o'clock and we are at the top of the hour. We are about to get into the Real Shit's Only Music segment. We will be back on at 4:30 with more G.L.U.E Movement Radio. Holla at your boy. We out here. 4:30, we back on.